Let's get to today's talkers, electrical cars. Good reason we're having this one. You will have noticed that there is something of a push going on with regards to all things electric. So Alex Hershey's been in an electric car. We're going to be speaking to her a little later on.
We are indeed. She was part of the tour that went from Dubai to RAK yesterday. She drove in a Tesla. We'll be hearing from her this morning. What was that experience like and what are the pros and cons of owning an electrical car, because she does own one.
Let's have a look at the statistics locally. Apparently electric or hybrid vehicles will have 10% of the new vehicle share in Dubai in the next 4 years. It's not just that. About 20 years later, we are instead of looking for a power outlet, cable and charge electronic devices, people will be able to send and receive power. That's technology that's being developed according to the State of the Future report, which was released at the World Economic Forum in Davos. We heard earlier on this week, just yesterday in fact, that a local bank here in the UAE is offering a new green loan scheme as an incentive to buy an electric or hybrid car in the UAE. Look, all the evidence points towards electric cars. It makes sense. It's going to be great for the climate. It's great for the economy. It's great for global citizens out there. The question is, would you? And I'm going to put my hand up here and say, at the moment, I wouldn't. Now, I know I'm going to come in for a little bit of stick and criticism for that. There is reason for that. We'll go into those very shortly. Vesti Khan, you would?
Absolutely. 100% if they were available here, and if they weren't as expensive as they are at the moment, I would definitely buy an electrical car.
So there's a couple of ifs for you there, and I think that's part and parcel of my thinking as well at the moment. There are too many question marks around electric cars and the infrastructure around it. All good and well what we think. It's more important what you think. So do text us your thoughts. Do you think we're a society that would adopt electrical cars? Would you drive or even buy an electrical car? Send us your thoughts, please, to 4001. A man who has a much more educated opinion and the insighter into the industry as a whole joins us live in the studio to give us his thoughts. A voice that is familiar to many listeners of Dubai Eye. Here's the Deputy General Manager of Autodata. He's live here in the studio. Bill Carter joins us on the agenda. Morning to you, Bill. Great to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, Tom. Morning, Vesti.
Listen, Bill, bless you, thanks very much indeed for taking time to speak to us first and foremost. Is this just a matter of time? We keep being given these years when things are going to change and things we must change by those years as well. Is it just a matter of time before petrol and gas guzzlers become a thing of the past?
Yes, without a doubt. You're seeing a rapid rate of change these days. Two of the things that always concern people about electric vehicles are, one, the cost, and two, the range. How far can you drive before the thing runs out of power? Now, there have been rapid changes in technology. If you look at the cost of the batteries for these vehicles, they've dropped 65% in 5 years. So the rate of change and the rate of the costs of these batteries are coming down is accelerating. Also, the ranges are getting longer and longer. So we're heading towards the time when those concerns will disappear. And make no mistake, the internal combustion engine as we know it, and I love it. I've been in the industry 48 years, started out working on engines.
Yeah.
Their days are numbered. They have to be. And most of the manufacturers are gearing up to the fact that 10 to 15 years' time, the petrol engine as we know it will be dead.
This is obviously a global concern, and there is good reason as well. We're constantly reminded about emissions, carbon emissions. We're constantly reminded about the greener economy that we should be aspiring to. Let's take it a little more regionally, though. And you and I well know we just have to drive out of the studio here onto the roads, and there is a culture for muscle cars here. People want to be seen. They want to be heard. They like the roar of an engine. Yeah. They like big exhaust pipes and things like that. That they're not alone. There are other cultures around the world that are after that. How do you replace that with the electric revolution?
It is very difficult, especially in a country such as the UAE. Most of us expats come out here. It gives us a chance to own and drive a car that we could never afford to run back home. So consequently, yes, there is that draw that it's the one time in your life you can drive a big gas guzzling V8. Again, you have to take advantage of that while it's there. And it is going to be very difficult to convince people to give that up and go into an electric or a hybrid vehicle. But I think that the choice is going to be made for us. I don't think we're going to have a say in it in reality, in that it's going to be forced on us. Manufacturers are fighting a continuing battle against new emission regulations, and this is what they have to work to. So it's being forced on everybody. It's not just being forced on the consumer, it's actually being forced on the manufacturers themselves, that they have to make these things more efficient. And the petrol engine is getting towards the end of its life. There's not much more you can actually do to them to make them any more efficient. So new technology has to come in, whether it be electric, whether it be hydrogen fuel technology. There's all sorts of things waiting in the wings to come in, but it's the cost and the time element. And I think our route forward, temporarily, I think, is hybrid. It's a mix of petrol and electric.
Bill, just to that point though, because cost is something that's cropping up, I'm just looking at the text messages that are flooding in already. 4001, you coming through with your opinions. Do keep those coming in to us. In terms of cost, especially and incentivization, especially here where in relative terms the cost of fuel is still fairly low compared to other parts of the world, and is not a major concern in terms of the budgeting for somebody. Is that going to be a true driver as well when authorities, governments take a stand and make fuel exorbitantly expensive?
Yes, I think it will be. I think that we've seen that move start already with the way that the subsidy of fuel prices has disappeared, and fuel is going up again for February. Yeah. So, it's reflecting more what's going on in the world market, and this will continue. So, we've got introduction of VAT coming in next year. What effect is that going to have on fuel prices? Is it going to be on fuel? And these are all the things that will gradually come in and perhaps convince people that they need to make that change. Whatever happens, it's going to change. You either embrace it, you can fight against it, but you're going to lose.
Well, there are challenges, though. Two of the challenges that crop up all the time on our text line, and two residents in the UAE. One, batteries and the heat. Will they survive? And two, infrastructure. I think we know there's 100 charging stations in the UAE presently, but that's not enough to sustain 2 million people if they're driving electrical cars. So talk us through your thoughts on the challenges and solutions to those.
Okay, so the thing with the infrastructure, yes, that's always a difficult point, and I think every European capital around the world has suffered the same issues of worries about, I can get to work, but can I charge at work and get back again? We're relatively lucky in that if you take Dubai on its own, the ranges of these cars, yes, you can commute backwards and forwards to work, charge the thing overnight at home. They'll charge off a modified power socket in your garage. So it's not too much of a problem. The problem comes when you get people who are commuting, say, from Dubai to Abu Dhabi or vice versa, or coming in from Ajman and Sharjah. Then there are problems, and yes, there will need to be more charging points. There are charging points appearing. I was up in Naif over the weekend, and in the RTA car park there, on one floor, there were charging points lined up there. So it is starting to happen. It will be slow, because obviously there's no point having all these charging points if nobody's going to use them. So it has to be a balance of as more vehicles become available, then the infrastructure needs to grow. But make no mistake, it is going to happen. We're not sure at this stage what the timescales are, but there is certainly more interest. Certainly with hybrids, we know that. With Lexus and Toyota have got a number of hybrids out there for sale. Nissan have as well. So, the market is starting to wake up, and there are people who will want to be first adopters. Things like Tesla. We've been contacting Tesla for the past year to find out when are they officially going to be available here, and we haven't had a reply as yet. So there are issues, but we're getting over them.
These are the thoughts of Bill Carter. He's the Deputy General Manager of Autodata. Talking electric cars this morning, obviously a massive campaign going on around the UAE. We'll be talking to Alex Hershey a little later on. She's in one of those electric cars. She'll be giving us her reports. But at the moment, we've got Bill Carter in studio. He's the Deputy General Manager of Autodata. We're looking at the state of electric cars, not just globally, but also here regionally, and asking you basically, would you buy one? Would you drive one? A lot of people coming through. Rauya has said, I'm dying to get a Tesla. So I'm sure that's Rauya. It's definitely not you texting into the show, is it, Vastikan?
No.
Okay. We've also had one from Ahmed Siddiqui. Ahmed says, I'd love to own Tesla or forthcoming Faraday Future. However, the only concern that I am trying to find a solution is the heavily apartment-style living in this part of the world. Where do I plug my car for overnight recharge, considering the fact there must be a few more like me who need to do the same as well? Let's get to the thoughts of Bill on this one as well, because that seems to be a recurring concern. All good and well, you putting your recharging station into your own private garage, if you're lucky to have a villa or a large property. If you live in an urban environment, apartment, where you are reliant on the owners or the managers of said apartment block to put in those stations, then it becomes a little more
Oh yeah, without doubt. These are all the infrastructure problems that are questioned all over the world, and there are ways around it. I mean, most apartment blocks, or the vast majority, seem to have allocated parking. So if that's the case, then there's no reason why the building owners can't allocate certain bays to electric vehicles. There are always ways around these questions and queries. The other thing is there are charging areas that are available, that they're trialling it in Europe certainly, where you just basically drive over a plate. A plate is mounted in the parking bay, so you don't actually plug the car in. It's induction charging, so you park over it and it charges through induction. So that's one of the technologies that I can see coming.
It's not going to work here though, because you're going to get somebody who's going to take in your parking spot, aren't you? That'll be it.
That'll be the end of it.
It's going to take her education for sure.
I just want to bring Serena in, because you picked up on a text message that you saw as well, again with regards to infrastructure.
Yes, Anthony was saying that the same stale arguments re electric vehicles, but no mention of after-sales reliability and spare parts. Which I found quite interesting, because obviously you're trying to get these cars on the roads, but you do have to look forward to the bigger picture as well, because everybody purchasing or driving such vehicles, I mean, when you do have problems, you mentioned Mac before, Bill, with the, everybody sometimes has problems with cables and connection charging, and then if you have that problem with your car is your livelihood. You can't rely on nipping down to the shop and getting a new cable at 5 o'clock in the morning.
And I think it's a very important point. It's a very valid point, because official imports are only brought in when a manufacturer is certain that the vehicle will stand up to the conditions in this market. This market is plagued by grey import vehicles that are coming in from North America or Europe, and they are not built to cope with the conditions that we have here. This region is classed by car manufacturers as super hot. If a vehicle is not built for super hot climate, it will not survive out here. If you take somebody like Toyota and Lexus, they ran test vehicles out here for years before they actually launched them officially, to make sure that the batteries would stand up to the heat and the dust and everything else. So, the people that are bringing in grey imports, okay, you're going to have problems. There was a story, I don't know how true this is, story I heard last year, that somebody imported a Tesla, and to get it serviced, they sent it back to the States. Well, how green is that? They're going to fly their car back to the States to have it serviced. It's ridiculous. Defeats the whole object of the vehicle. But the thing is that official imports will be tested to make sure they can stand up to the conditions in this climate. Grey imports will not. It's a fact. We get that with petrol engines, let alone electric, with problems with the heat and dust out here. So I think that issue, if there is an official import, the infrastructure will be there, because they won't import the vehicle until they've got the infrastructure to support it. So I think that question will disappear.
Bill, staying with batteries and the conditions in the Middle East that affect cars, we've had so many texts coming in. For instance, Tala saying batteries not environmentally friendly, producing them and even disposing of them, environmental disaster. Second, the electricity powering these cars is not produced by unicorns. Fossil fuels will burn more in power plants to fuel the needs of electric cars. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's partially true. I think one of the things that people forget about let's talk about oil, is when they say that you have to produce electricity and you're burning gas or oil or whatever, that is still more efficient than the oil that is being used in vehicles. if you take how that oil is discovered, if you take the whole picture, that's from the day they drill the well to the day it ends up in the pump. It's been transported, it's been refined, it goes through God knows how many processes. So I don't think people look at the whole picture. They look at the fact, yes, the fuel's there and it's coming out the pump. They don't think about how it actually gets there from coming out the ground. So there's a lot to weigh up, pluses and minuses. Plus, if you're going towards green power, the visionary leaders here have invested in solar power. So, we know that solar is coming online. I don't think we'll ever get to the situation where you have a solar-powered car, because the arrays are so big to power a car, they'd never fit. The car would be bigger than a bus. Yeah. But certainly the power to generate electricity is getting cleaner.
Loads of comments. Bill, I'm conscious of time, but I'm also... You're not on a meter or anything like that. No. You're not on a charging point or anything. Are you okay for time?
Yeah, I'm okay for time.
If it's okay with you, I'm going to pose on you and ask you to stick around for just a little while, because you are a voice of reason. At least you got the answers for so many of the questions that are coming in. We've got the detractors of electric cars. We've got the supporters. Everyone are having their say. If you'd like to do the same, please do get involved in the conversation. Obviously, something that listeners feel very passionate about. This one's from Highton out there, saying there is no substitute to the sound of a sports car petrol engine. One here from Matthew McMullen, I should say, saying you could also have a soundtrack to your car's engine. Tesla that sounds like a Lambo. I'll be opting for electric car if the charging would be from renewable energy source, says Salman. No, says one of our listeners out there, I'd rather have government improve the public transport so I don't need a car. George has been in touch saying I'd definitely switch to electric cars. If all of us did the same, the whole world would benefit by being cleaner and more sustainable. Technology seems to be developing well. It'll soon just be a matter of price and time. This one from Matt saying, Vasti, Tom, re the electric car debate. US lawmakers have insisted that new electric cars are required to make a noise for the protection of pedestrians. Thank you for that. Osman's been in touch saying, I'd absolutely buy or drive an electric car. I test drove the BMW i3 and was amazed at how it performed and how good it felt about being environmentally friendly, and how I felt as about being environmentally friendly. Mike would like to ask the question, would like to know the cost for charging and the time it takes to charge an electric car. Well, let's put some of these questions to our special guest in studio, Bill Carter. The Deputy General Manager of Autodata has kindly stayed with us to give us more insight into the electric car revolution that is ongoing at the moment. Let's start with cost, if we can there, Bill, just picking up on a few of those points. I'm sure Osman had an amazing experience in the BMW i3, and I'm sure that he'd like to get his hands on one of those. Costs in terms of getting your hands on a top-end electric version like that, and costs of charging and maintaining, and the time it goes along with charging a car.
Yeah, the cost of the vehicles is, as we said earlier, is still relatively high currently, because about a third of the cost of the vehicle is actually the battery. So as battery costs drop, and as I said earlier, that they're already starting to come down, the costs of the vehicles will drop. And it's also about the scales of production. Obviously, the more you can build, the cheaper they become per unit to actually build. So the cost of the vehicles themselves will start to drop as technology improves. Now, charging, it varies depending on the vehicle, and it depends on the charging station you have put in your home. Different vehicles charge at different rates, and it can vary anything from about 3 hours upwards. Now, obviously, if you're using the car from home, you just leave it plugged in overnight and it will charge fully. It's not too much of an issue. There are fast charging points available, and they can give a relatively quick top-up charge to get you around, and they take, on average, I think it's about 30 minutes, and that's enough to give you range to get, say, to another charging point or whatever. So now the cost of that charge is difficult to judge, because, as I say, it varies depending on the vehicle and the type of charging unit you've got. But I've heard stories of about 40 dirhams for a charge. Now, how true that is, I've got no experience of what the actual costs are, but that seems to be fairly typical.
Let's go to the lines now and speak to Ahmed. Good morning, Ahmed.
Hi, good morning.
What are your thoughts on electrical cars?
So basically, electrical cars, in my opinion, I mean, they actually are less energy efficient and create more carbon emissions, in the environment than your average car. The reason being is generally we look at electrical systems as being more efficient, but then if you consider all the transmission losses, you're actually adding to the emissions in the environment and getting a less efficient system. Also, a significant portion of the emissions in a car's life cycle comes during the production. So by rushing in and buying a new electric car now, then waiting and getting the maximum out of your existing car, you're actually adding significant carbon emissions to the environment. And last, the batteries in these systems are made from heavy metals, which are quite damaging to the environment. And all these processes combined means switching quite early to your electric car is actually, at least in the short term, much more less environmentally friendly than sticking with your regular car.
Bill, any thoughts on that one? Thank you, Ahmed, for joining us this morning.
Yeah, I think you make some very valid points there. In that, yes, production is one of the biggest issues and the causes of pollution, and certainly that has to change. That's a universal fact. I think the point is that we have to look at what's going to happen going forward. Where, make no mistake, the oil is going to run out. So what do we do? We've got a choice. We either give up totally, or we find alternative ways of powering vehicles. Now, as I say, I would agree with some of the comments he made, but I think we have to look forward and say that technology is changing, and a lot of his concerns will be addressed over a period of time. But at the moment, I think that the main point is we need to move away from oil-based energy, pure and simple.
So short-term challenges for long-term gain.
Exactly,
This is the future. In the future, we'll hopefully see driverless cars, electrical cars, solar-powered rooftops. This is the way the world is moving.
Yeah. Without a doubt. We've got to wake up and smell the fumes. The oil is going to run out.
Yeah. Manufacturers are doing their bit. Obviously, there are intensive programs underway at the moment with all manufacturers trying to come up with solutions. Dealerships doing their bit as well. I mean, how easy? I mean, obviously we're just at the nascence of the sort of the revolution here. But you look at California, who've been sort of leading the role, and other parts of the world. Do dealers want to sell electric cars?
The dealers will sell whatever they can get. they just sell. So that's not an issue. I think it's about educating the dealers and the salesmen about the benefits of going down this route, because a consumer can be sold anything within reason, and so it's the whole industry's responsibility to change the mindset of the consumer by education.
And is that changing at the moment? Because is that a whole individual approach? What does Tom's decision, is that going to save the planet?
Well, you say that. In reality, if everybody thinks the same way, then yes, the change will come. Yeah. Pure and simple. And that's the way we've got to address it. As I say, the whole of the automotive industry has this duty to drive this initiative forward, and yes, it needs help from governments. There needs to be incentives to get people to change, and it's a fact of life. If there's a benefit in it for the consumer, they will then consider it. Pure and simple.
It's a game changer. I think we can all agree on that one. Give us a timeline though, Bill, if you can. I mean, what are we looking at in terms of when things will change for good?
I think we're going to see a rapid change. I believe the next 5 years are going to be really telling within this marketplace here. We've got lots of drive and enthusiasm from the government within the UAE. You've got initiatives like Masdar City, etc. And the fact that DEWA and the other energy companies are putting these charging points there is a willingness. I know I was talking to somebody at Alphatane Motors about the Toyota Prius, and the government departments have taken a huge interest in these hybrid vehicles. So there is the willingness there, and I think that will grow, and I think we're going to see massive changes over the next 5 years.
Well, just before we let you go, there is a question here from Rola that I want to put to you. I'd like to buy an electric car, but I've always wondered, can electric and gas cars drive on the same roads at the same time? Or are electric cars' performances different to gas cars that might be a bit chaotic on the roads? Please, can you explain if there's any difference?
Yeah, in reality, the electric cars actually respond faster than a petrol car. If you look at some of the performance figures of electric cars, their acceleration times are much faster than a petrol car because it's instant power. So I don't think there's any issue, because if the speed limit's 100 kilometres an hour, it's 100 kilometres an hour regardless of what you're driving. You might find an electric car will actually get there slightly quicker than a petrol one, but in truth, there's no huge difference in performance.
Bill,
so not a problem.
We appreciate your time this morning. We'd love to keep you for longer. Unfortunately, we've had the heads up. You're needed back in the office, so your time is so precious that we're taking it up here. You're needed to solve things back in the office, so we'll let you get back there. Just want to say a big thanks to all the Autodata team. Big thanks to the Deputy General Manager, Bill Carter. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
You're welcome.
This one's from Marina out there saying, my concern, energy required to build batteries and disposal of battery waste. And this one from Georgina out there saying, no, I wouldn't buy. I live in Alhambra village in Ras Al Khaimah, and for the privilege we're charged industrial rates of electricity. We pay 47 fils per kilowatt, so couldn't afford to charge the car overnight. Normal rate for expats outside of the village area is 27 fils per kilowatt. Cost.
Let's go to the lines now, Tom, and speak to our very own Alex Hershey, presenter of Drive Live. Morning, Alex.
Morning, guys. How are you?
We're great. So yesterday you were part of the global electric vehicle road trip. You took a drive all the way from the Burj Al Arab to RAK. Talk us through the experience.
Well, I've just heard a couple of those text messages you were reading out, and there are so many different things to consider before you buy one of these electric cars. First of all, I have to say, it was the most incredible experience, really. The technology in this car is beyond belief. If you ever get the chance to drive in a Tesla, you have to take that up. The speed is incredible. I was in one of the fastest models. It was the P90D, and it had ludicrous mode as well. So this is 0 to 102.7 seconds. It was, as I say, ludicrous. Honestly, it was the most amazing experience. It has a summon mode on it, so you're outside the car, no one is in the car, and you can actually drive the car from an app on your phone. So the valet mode is awesome as well. You're giving it into valet at a hotel, just pop it in valet mode. It takes out almost all of the power from the car, and also locks the glove box and the boot for you. And of course the self-driving mode. We were stuck actually from the Burj Al Arab, just as soon as you get onto Al Ittihad Road going to Sharjah last night, stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic. I know a lot of you listening will know exactly what I'm talking about. Just switched into self-driving mode, and the car was driving on its own. I did not have to do anything. And this morning when I was coming back from Ras Al Khaimah, I was in my own car, having left the Tesla there with the other group of guys going on the rest of the trip around the UAE. And I was thinking to myself, I wish my car had this self-driving mode. It was stop-start the entire time. And in the Tesla, you didn't even have to really put your hands on the wheel. It would remind you once in a couple of minutes. You'd have to keep tapping it to tell the car you're still there and you're awake. It's a safety precaution, but no feet on the pedals either. So it's complete self-driving mode. It was just an incredible experience.
Well, as you know, I've been to California and driven the Tesla too in ludicrous mode, and the thing that I picked up the most was how fast it is. It is fast to the point where it kind of makes you feel sick. But the point here is that in California, they've adopted this technology very quickly, very rapidly. We've just had Bill on saying the same thing. You drive an electric car. What are the pros and cons for you? When do you think we'll actually adopt it here?
Yeah, so as I just heard, those couple of messages being read out. First of all, prices. I totally understand whoever wrote in from Ras Al Khaimah and said, look, the electricity we pay is just too much. And that is a major concern. If you're looking to swap from petrol to electricity, you want it to be cheaper. You don't want it to be more expensive or just the same. But for anyone else, I was talking to someone who pays Emirati rates for electricity. That's about 4 dirhams they'll pay for a charge, and that charge on a Tesla will take you 400 kilometres. Now, it's probably ranges between 4 dirhams and 12 dirhams for most of us here in Dubai, paying on the electricity fees that we get. So that's really, I mean, look, 4 dirhams, between 4 and 12 dirhams is a lot less than what you're going to be paying at the petrol tank usually. The problems that I face are we need more options. I've been talking to some people who want to buy an electric car, but there just aren't enough options here in the UAE. There isn't an official distributor for Tesla yet, but I hear rumours that this is going to happen this year. So that's one thing. We just need people to bring in the cars. Let's start there, first of all. There needs to be more regulation and approvals in order to make it practical. I know I told you guys this before, but yeah, I drive a hybrid, but it can also drive in fully electric mode. And so I tried plugging it in downstairs in our apartment block, just in the parking, where there's just a normal outlet, just a normal socket. So I plugged that in, somewhere you'd plug in like a vacuum cleaner or whatever else. And they said, look, you can't do that, you're not allowed. So we went through the official approvals through our developer, or some kind of process. Anyway, the response was a flat-out no, you're not allowed to charge your car. So practically, it's not looking great at the moment. I think if you're in a villa, it's not a problem at all. You install your own charging station at home, you're good to go. You don't visit a petrol station for a few years. You go home, you charge your car up overnight, you're good to go in the morning. But for those of us who live in an apartment block, I think there needs to be a better approval process. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, no, a few challenges. Your prediction quickly, Al, when do you think we'll fully adopt this technology here?
4 or 5 years. Maybe. I think this year we're going to see, hopefully, a proper Tesla dealership or a distributor. So that's going to start more of an uptake. There's already about 70 Teslas here in the UAE, but all of them have been imported. So I think with an actual dealership, it should be good to go. Lots more people will get involved. Now, the first charging stations were just rolled out in Ras Al Khaimah last night at one of the hotels there. So that's going to take off in the next couple of years as well, of course, because we need the infrastructure. So all in all, I think we're trying to change mindsets, putting in infrastructure, bringing the cars to the country. I'm probably predicting a couple more years, 3, 4, maybe 5 years.
Thanks, Al. Got to leave it there, but we'll speak to you a bit later today again. Thanks
all
so
right,
much.
guys. We'll
Take
chat
care.
later. Thanks.
And we're focusing on cost of recharging and things like that. What about just investing into cars at the moment? I mean, they're expensive.
They are expensive. Of course, it's supply and demand, it's market forces. If you're going to import the car here, all of the extras, top of the range, it's going to set you back at least 250,000 dirhams. That's what I hear from Tesla owners here. Of course, it is a huge investment for a long-term gain. It's too expensive for most people at the moment. But yeah, again, if there's a need in the market and they bring the cars here and the batteries become cheaper to produce, then the cost will come down. So possibly you won't be paying 250,000.
Isn't it down to manufacturers' responsibility? I mean, Bill was on earlier and he was saying how eventually the cost of making these is going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Yet manufacturers will want the profit. So they will continue to sell these cars to you as the consumer at an extortionate price because they want to make a dramatic profit. And I think that's where they need to step in and say, okay, we need to do our bit towards the environment and start moving forward with the times and letting more of these cars onto the roads and start making them affordable for people to buy, because let's face it, nobody's going to be able to afford one at that price.
Well, it's certainly more affordable in America, where the cars are, regularly seen on the roads there, because it's not as often seen on the roads in the UAE. As I say, import costs, maintenance costs, everything that goes with owning this car makes it a huge investment, a huge purchase price. But again, the more and more we see the industry adopt the changes and bring the cars in, of course, that price will go down.
250 grand layout for your car in the first place. 40, 50 dirhams for a fill-up. How often do you need to fill up the tank? That is one of the other questions that needs to be sorted out. The one we haven't got round, though, is how much does it cost to install a battery charging system into your villa, house, apartment block, wherever. how often do you need to do it, and how often do you have to replace the battery itself?
These are good questions. I don't know the answer to those, but if anybody out there does know the answer, if you live in a villa and you have a converter for your electric car, tell us how much you paid for that. Of course, there's free stations around the UAE, 100 of them. So if you don't have it in your home, you can.
But, I mean, we all know how pressed we are for time. This is my thing, is that, if do I have to set aside 4 hours in a day or during a week or however long the process is going to take, that I'm going to take this car and leave it? Ideally, you want to do it overnight while you're sleeping in your apartment block or whatever. That doesn't seem to be the solution and answer at the moment. So going to public places, it's just a waste of my time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge. Again, electric car owners out there, can you answer our questions? How do you deal with this if you own a car?
Jared's been in touch. He says the reality is that electric vehicles and the infrastructure that supports them unfortunately don't yet suit the needs, the desires or the budgets of most car buyers. Something a little more succinct from one of our other listeners, no name with this one, saying my 5.7 litre V8 says no to electric.
And that's the truth. A lot of people don't want to give up their high performance gasoline cars that make a noise on the road. It's part of the experience of driving a certain vehicle. So the question is, would you give that up? If this becomes the future and we're forced to drive these cars, how would you feel about it?
I'm just going to quote you a couple of lines with regards to the subject at hand, the subject that we're discussing. The quote reads like this: people think, oh well, I'll just get an electric car. There are places where if you buy an electric car, you're actually increasing CO2 emissions because the electricity infrastructure is emitting more CO2 than you would have if you'd had a gasoline-powered car. Who would say such things as that? Who would have a quote like that attributed to them?
Say it again.
People think, oh well, I'll just get an electric car. There are places where if you buy an electric car, you're actually increasing CO2 emissions because the electricity infrastructure is emitting more CO2 than you would have if you'd had a gasoline-powered car.
That's interesting.
Who would say that?
I'd say Trump.
See, you'd say Donald Trump. And we all know that Donald Trump, it's not the top thing on his agenda,
Nope.
is it? The green economy and climate change. It's not up there for him. So Donald Trump is a good call.
Makes sense. That's really difficult. I would probably say one of the manufacturers that don't want to move into the realm of electric cars.
Okie dokie. So one of the big gasoline manufacturers or something.
Maybe
interesting.
the American muscle cars.
Okay, interesting. Because the person that actually said that is one of the world's great environmentalists, Bill Gates. So when somebody like Bill Gates has got doubts about the emissions that are coming out of electric cars, surely it makes you sit up and listen and just ask the questions that we're asking this morning.
And it's a question that one of our listeners has raised as well, that overall, emissions is a problem. So maybe electric cars aren't the solution. And if they're not, what is the solution?
Rupert Baird, thank you to you. Would love an electric car if I could drive 800 miles in the same amount of time it takes in my current car. Cost the same as an equivalent fuel-burning model, and there is a viable method to dispose of the batteries. And most importantly, governments will allow construction of enough power plants to provide the electricity to charge all of those batteries. Thank you very much indeed to you all. The figures aren't great. The figures ain't great. Americans bought just 102,600 electric vehicles in 2015, a 70% decline from the previous year, according to the researcher Autodata. Nissan Motor Company sold 43% fewer of its all-electric Leaf and General Motors company reported an 18% drop for its Chevrolet Volt, a plug-in model that's driven by an electric motor and has a gasoline engine to recharge its batteries. So the numbers are dipping, which ain't what the manufacturers want to hear.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if these cars were readily available and the batteries were cheap to manufacture and they came in at a reasonable amount of money, would
And
we
looked
invest?
cool?
They are cool.
So-
They are cool.
Not having this argument.
Have you been in an electric car, Tommy?
I've not. I have
Okay.
actually been in an electric car. Yes.
Okay.
I don't own an electric car. I have no desire to own an electric car at the moment. And just be honest, I know that's probably the wrong answer, and I get the environmental element, and I don't want to say that I'd be ignorant about the fact that there needs to be more focus on the green economy and the climate change, etc. So doing our bit there is great, as we need to do it in all our lives, in different aspects of our lives. But in terms of the infrastructure of the electric car industry at the moment, there's nothing that's making me go out and buy one because of the investment that I'm going to have to wait. I am more than happy to wait, and call me selfish, call me old-fashioned, but I'm more than happy to wait until it's common.
Yeah.
Until there are more of them on the roads.
Absolutely.
And until this sort of development phase has gone through. And I know we keep having this thing about, but there are amazing models out there. And I'm sure the one that Alex Hershey is driving around is beautiful. She wouldn't drive around in one that isn't beautiful, that's for sure. But that's not that's not common. It's almost like a concept car on the roads compared to everything out there at the moment. It's something that will become common in the future.
But that's with any technology, isn't it? You get your first adopters, your second adopters, your very late adopters. Those people, maybe like yourself, would rather wait and see that all of the challenges have been ironed out and it's easy to purchase, it's cheap, it's available, it's part of life. We've had that, sorry Serena, with Apple, we've had that with any technology in our lifetimes. You'll always get those first adopters that will pay a lot of money, will face the challenges because they want to drive these cars first. Of course it will change with time.
They're also trying to see, I think, the response as well. They're trying to give people a taste of something to see if they're going to bite and move forward with it. They want to know that there is the market for it. I mean, there has to be, because it's the way the planet is going as well, from the environmental aspect of it. But until society actually starts pushing it more down our throats, instead of commercials, at the moment all your commercials are about, regular cars. So until it once development's there and it's moved forward, and then society starts adopting that and encouraging people, doing the marketing for it, saying, this is what you need to have, and da-da-da-da, and Michael Jordan's got one or whatever and stuff, then that's where you go with it.
I see it as a concept at the moment. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. They seem like concept cars, and there are some amazing concept cars out there, but the ones that are readily available, I mean, electric cars on the whole, the designs aren't great. They're practical, but they're not wow.
I beg to differ. I think they are wow. I think the technology and the way the car is built and what it offers you is wow.
Technology, yes. I get the technology.
But even the body of the car,
but
the
look,
inside, I think it's wow. I think it's...
for the top of the range one, for the ones that they're being used as the sort of poster boys and girls of the industry.
But couldn't you say that
for your
about
average
any car? Couldn't you say that about any car out there? Some are nicer than others. They're not all perfect, beautiful cars. You choose a car that you think suits your budget and your family and whatever. They're not all beautiful. I think they're gorgeous cars, but they're not for everybody.
But that's my point. If we're imploring people to come on board and get involved in this, there are those out there that don't have 250,000, and that sort of mid-range and that low range doesn't really exist at the moment. The ones that do just look like something out of Back to the Future. We're not the cool ones.
Fair enough. You're just saying you don't think it's worth the cost.
I do, from a sort of environmental point of view.
I get that.
But at the moment, until the infrastructure's there, until more people are doing it, I don't see why I should.
For 250,000 dirhams, you want the Batmobile. You want something that looks so exotic and incredible that you're willing to pay the price.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's why supercars are so expensive, because the design is incredible.
We are going to go to the line in just a few moments' time. Let's just get a few more of your thoughts out there. Hi, this is Ali. I've got a question regarding off-roading for electric cars. Any electric off-road trucks and cars in the future? If anyone's got any answers to that, we'd love to hear from you. Mac Dubai was also been in touch saying, what about the O&G lobbies? Will they block electric cars? Thank you to you for that one. O&G obviously being oil and gas. So thank you for that, Mac.
Let's go to the lines now and speak to Stuart. Good morning, Stuart.
Good morning.
You had a different solution. Explain.
Well, it's not mine. I didn't invent it. But hydrogen fuel cells are far more of a longer-term solution than battery or electric cars. I mean, electric cars, you're passing the buck. You've got to generate the electricity, you've got to put it into the battery, and you've got to wait for that to charge. Hydrogen fuel cells are clean because the only byproduct is water. So what comes out of your exhaust pipe is water. Secondly, hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe by multiple hundreds of times compared to everything else. The only thing really that's stopping at the moment is, well, two things. The first is the mass production of hydrogen, because at the moment it's expensive to produce hydrogen on that sort of level that we would need. And second, obviously, is the infrastructure, the pipelines or the plants to do so. But in California, Honda have got a town that is, all the cars are hydrogen fuel cell cars. The gas stations produce and give you hydrogen. The range of the car is the same as a normal car. You can go as far as a normal car in a gas tank, and then you fill up again, and you can go again, and you fill up again, and you go again, and the performance of the car is as good, if not better, than normal petrol car that you would be driving around today.
Stuart, this is the first time I've ever heard of hydrogen fuel cell cars, so that might be the next step after electrical cars. Do we know of any cons, any challenges besides the production of hydrogen?
The twofold. I mean, the one is the production and also the pipeline or the infrastructure to carry that around. And the second is the legacy issue of hydrogen is a combustible and actually an explosive material. So the kind of gas tanks, for instance, that you would need in your car would need to be hugely reinforced to make sure that in the event of an accident that there wasn't a rupture or a leak anywhere near a spark. But then so is gasoline. Although not quite as explosive, it's also highly combustible. But other than those two things, not really. There's no major downsides of hydrogen as a fuel, with that exception.
That's
and like
really
I said, when you
interesting.
burn hydrogen, it combines with oxygen to produce water. That's it.
Well, you've certainly educated us this morning, Stuart. It's the first time I've heard of it, and I'm sure many listeners, you heard it here first on the agenda. Thanks so much for joining us.
Stu, just one
You're
quick
welcome.
one from me. Do you reckon you could bottle that water as well?
I don't ever suggest that putting your mouth around a tailpipe is a good idea.
I will not give it a go just as yet then. Stuart, thank you very much indeed to you for your thoughts this morning. Listen, both sides of the story being aired this morning, both sides of the opinions, and that's what the show's about, and that's what this discussion is all about. It is all about opinions. We've been asking you whether you would invest in clean car technology, specifically electric car technology. This one from Anthony, passionate fan of Dubai Eye, been in the industry for 35 years, tired of listening to the same stale arguments with regards to electric vehicles. No mention of after-sales reliability and spare parts. Thank you for that one. This from another of our listeners. How long does the battery last after the warranty runs off? How do we dispose of the dead batteries? Charging cars may increase demand on the grid, especially in the summer. Electricity still comes from traditional sources, not necessarily green. Thank you for your thoughts there. And this one from Imad out there saying, I'm considering a Panamera hybrid at the moment, but I'm worried about having to replace the batteries rapidly given the harsh weather conditions. So people have questions, they have concerns, and that's what this show is all about airing those concerns, whether you are pro or against. One man who is certainly pro is our next guest here on the show, an owner of electric cars since 2008, an ambassador for electric car technology, and a man that sits on the committee that helps to govern the vision and path for electric cars here in the region. It is Faraz Al-Mazroui, joins us live on the line. Faraz, thanks very much indeed for listening in and taking time to speak to us this morning.
Thank you so much. I mean, first of all, I have to thank Dubai Eye for putting a show like that and getting the listeners more awareness exposed about electric cars in this market, especially in this part of the area.
Extraordinary response, Faraz, from listeners out there, which just proves how personal a topic this is for so many of our listeners.
Of course.
Do you? I mean, you are a great supporter of electric cars. That goes without saying. Do you understand the concerns of others?
Yeah. Look, the goal here is to shift mindsets.
Yeah.
And the CO2 levels in the world. That's the whole goal of it. If we could accelerate this in the whole aspect and get the mindsets changed from people and actually get it cost effective, that is the best way to penetrate the industry in this way. Now, people own Teslas. People, as you said, had the grey market situation where they'll purchase their car from the US or Europe and import them themselves and take their own risk with this. And you know what? They are the founding fathers, I would say, for this electric car in UAE. But people need to understand. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the government, but I'm going to give my personal opinion that the government and His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed said it, that we will celebrate the last barrel of oil in 2030, which means that we need to accelerate everything we can do in this industry regarding of its electric vehicle, self-driving situations. Maybe hydrogen is going to be involved in this. And we are very positive, as I am local from Dubai, and I am very positive that this transition is going to happen very soon. And in an experience of electric car owner, people need to understand batteries are expensive and they're getting cheaper by the year. So there will be one point where it will match the normal car. Now, governments around the world, we've seen all aspects from Norway, US, Denmark, and all these areas in Europe and in part of China, and this, they have incentives programs where it will affect you as a consumer to see if you have free parking, you will have probably free areas in the mall, free charging stations. It will make it more attractive to buy an EV. And that's the goal we're reaching right now.
Faris, can I just ask, I mean, you've had some electric cars since 2008. Why did you adopt it? What did you love about the concept of an electric car? I mean, 2008, it wasn't even a word we would use.
Well, it was something interesting. It's something different. If it's electric in the end, you charge it at home, and we thought, I thought, why not? Give it a shot. I mean, I didn't adopt it immediately, but later on, I generate more interest. I sometimes sit down in a coffee shop, feel like I'm an electric engineer, which I'm not. Since I've been looking at kilowatts and what is the range and what kind of infrastructure. And believe me, probably you guys didn't speak this, the DEWA has 100 charging points already in Dubai. Anybody can download a DEWA app or a PlugShare app, and they will look all these charging stations in Dubai already. So if anyone who has an EV, believe me, they're happy. And with Tesla, why is Tesla expensive? It gives you so much range. So the battery it has is about 400 kilometers. And I doubt any one of you guys drive 400 kilometers every day today. And the price of each kilowatt, if it's a 90 kilowatt battery, the price of each kilowatt is 23 fills.
It's nothing.
So you do the math.
Yep.
It's nothing. And you go home 4 or 5 hours, it's fully charged. And you go home every day, you have 30% left in your battery or 40% left in your battery.
So Faris, what do you say to the naysayers, though, the people that don't want to adapt the technology? They're worried about emissions and other environmental issues.
Look, who is polluting the roads? The consumer, the people. So the people has to pay for it. That's my personal opinion. I'm sorry, but that's how I will see it. You're gonna pollute I have kids, and I would like them to have a healthy life, and I would love to have plans or something that, look, if your car pollutes more, you pay for it. If your car pollutes less, you get paid for it.
So you incentivize good behavior and tax bad behavior.
Exactly. Something in that pipeline or in that ethics will be nice to have. Because look, dealers in the UAE, insurance companies in the UAE, we will support. I mean, I personally will support and understand. Like when the hybrid came in the US, like give California as an example. Okay, they came up with, they say, you have to have a hybrid. We'll give you money if you drove a hybrid. We'll give you discount if you drove a hybrid. Why did they do that? They have a problem with CO2 in the road. It's a health issue. Now it's safety then health. Any pillar in any city will tell you safety first, then health comes in behind it. And if we put a plan together, and UAE, I believe they have one of the best execution-wise to put in the plan and then execute the plan immediately. There is no wait time because His Highness has a vision, basically. And his vision is, I'm not going to sit and wait. I'm going to keep climbing that staircase, basically. If it goes up, it goes up.
Faris, it is a fascinating topic. We thank you for your convincing arguments as well this morning. Keep fighting the good fight, my friend, and thank you very much indeed for explaining it to our listeners. We'll definitely be talking to you again very, very soon, but for now, thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great response to this one. Listen, we haven't had time to get to all the text messages. Apologies if we haven't read yours out, but keep listening to Dubai Eye, because this is a conversation that will continue, I can guarantee you that, throughout the day, into Drive Live a little later on as well, as Alexander comes back, if she gets back, that is. I don't know.
She's
she might
safely back.
She might run out of charge on the way back.
No, I think she made it home. She's okay. But it's not just a conversation that'll continue today. Apparently it's going to continue for the next 5 years.
Oh, indeed it is.
Yeah.
Why did the world move to cooking gas replacing electric stove if electric cars are the better option, or commercial in the guise of the environment? Again, asks one of our listeners. This one's from Simon, saying hydrogen fuel cars were in use in the Second World War, using a large bag on the roof to contain the fuel in gaseous phase rather than the present method of liquid phase. Simon, thank you. James has been in touch. Adapt and rationalise the Golf-style cart. Also, have transition roads to encourage the change without SALIC, etc. as incentives. And let's adopt the incremental behavioural change. P.S. Battery chargers are available and cart batteries are readily available. Also, this can be applied to areas where conventional cars can be parked and battery ride in. Thanks for it, James.
No name on this one. Your other caller is misinformed. Producing hydrogen takes a lot of electricity at the plant side. Also, someone needs to put the infrastructure for the fuel stations, not to mention that the price per kilowatt is still not competitive. Terrible idea, with better alternatives out there. That's referring to the hydrogen cell fuel cars. We spoke to Stuart a little bit earlier.
This one from Samia out there saying, I wonder whether people driving electric car would still open their doors, spit and throw cigarette butts into the streets as well. Disgusting. That's for another day, I think, Samia. But thank you all the same. I don't think you can control human behaviour, even if you have EV as well. This one from one of our listeners, no name, saying, after hearing all the arguments this morning, I'm now more than ever convinced that electric cars are a farce. Thank you for your thoughts and opinions on that one. This one from Darmesh. I'd love to have an electric car. However, we need to consider a few things. CO2 emission for the electricity. It can vary from nuclear to hydro to natural gas or diesel. Rebates as well from government and otherwise. It is big in many countries, CO2 emissions in producing these batteries and the logistics of the same. Also, internal combustion engines are pretty efficient these days. Why change?
So many big words. Phil says, I would buy a Tesla over my 6.2 litre engine, but there is no way my apartment building or office will install a charger, and there is no way to dangle a cable all the way to the basement. Ahmed says, that is a natural concern, but not true. That is because of different system efficiencies for huge power stations and small autos. And no name on this one, saying hybrid cars are the current best way forward. That one from Paul. Thank you.
It's not about switching to electric in the region, but using additives in the engine. But also here will not work because of the agreements between agency and car companies. We tried to introduce an additive that reduced soot emission by 70% on diesel engines, but it hasn't had any change whatsoever, says one of our listeners out there. It depends on the manufacturers approving these because that's who drives the decision making. And another one that's come through as well from, where's it gone? There it is. Shah Bean saying, I feel hydrogen car didn't get much attention. It's a byproduct, is water. BMW had it, but method of storing hydrogen fuel in station was costly, due to which it didn't go ahead.
Tom, I think it's time to wrap up, but this one from Vince, which I thought was really interesting. Stop scaremongering. Oil won't run out. Current proven reserves will be over by 2100, but we will discover more into an unconventional form and places. I'm not worried about oil running out before my great-grandson is born. So Vince thinks we're scaremongering today. Oil won't run out.
Kent says his bit, let's separate facts from hype. Batteries are not the right technology for cars. H2 fuel cells or hybrid technologies make much more sense and more efficient, says Kent. This one from Ian, our building emitted 1,600 tons of CO2 last year just for AC. How many cars did we do on that particular occasion? And thanks also to all of you that have been having your your say on the roads. Ahmed saying electric cars actually create more emissions. We got onto that one a little earlier on. What about solar power? Asked one of our listeners. Recharging electric cars is a good idea. Provide electricity for the charger is from clean energy, says Rajneesh. And my Frenchie is about 2 years old. He eats his...
No.
Oh, that's
not
for
that
Suzanne.
one. That's
Okay.
for Suzanne show.
All right.
A show for another day. Interesting text coming through. What a vibrant discussion we've had today on electrical vehicles, and it will continue for sure.
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you very much indeed to you, Vastik Khan. Thanks to Esther on the ones and twos. Vas, we're back tomorrow, correct?
We are indeed.
News coming your